Welcome to the Crisscross Corner Podcast.
Welcome back to the Crisscross Corner. I'm your host, Chris Canty. Mark is working right now. So we have Marcel Smith in here and Basil Lowe from the Great Debaters. We might get Chris Bird in here later, but he's getting his Zoom stuff ready. And we also have a special guest that I will introduce later on today. We're going to be talking about the history of Detroit, how to fix Detroit, and is gentrification a good thing or a bad thing? We'll get to that later because I have a take on it as well. Before we begin, please shout out to the 650 members of the Facebook group, Crisscross Corner Facebook group. If you don't want to miss another episode of the podcast, please listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and the Anchor app. Speaking of the Anchor app, go to anchor.fm/crisscrosscorner/support. Give your $4.99 a month to help sustain future episodes, please. We need to help sustain more episodes and pay more people and pay my Zoom bill because they want their money now. But please go to anchor.fm/crisscrosscorner/support. Thank you for your support. Your support goes a long way. All right. What you doing, Detroit? What you doing? All right. Last weekend, we had a few storms. And we just had a storm yesterday, causing a lot of flooding. So about 70,000 people were expected to apply for FEMA aid after severe weather and flooding damaged their homes, flooding in the basements and everything else, trees and everything. So please pray for those affected. If you can, please support, help out as much as you can in the Detroit area. If you're listening right now, please get out there and help those in need. All right, people are getting out of Detroit real fast because of these storms. One person was trying to get out real quick. All right, so Michigan State Police, a trooper stopped a Hellcat going 155 miles an hour on I-75. 155 miles an hour, Basil.
What was this on?
I-75 around like the Holly area.
You mean where it's just before the construction, where it's still all bumpy and crap?
Yeah. Up there.
Did you say 105?
155.
Oh boy, how? And he stayed on the road?
Yeah.
I would have thought with all the cracks, he would have been bouncing all over the place.
Well, he tried to get away, but the cop got him a mile down the road. He was driving recklessly past all the other vehicles, heading northbound, so he was trying to get away from Detroit, going towards Flint. I don't know why. So he arrested the reckless driver. He arrested him for reckless driving. And to put on top of that, the officer was being super petty. He issued him a citation for tinted windows. He was like, this car getting towed, bro.
Just an extra FU.
He's like, you know what? Your windows are tinted. We'll write another one up for you. Goodness gracious. Please, y'all, slow down. Just because you got a Hellcat don't mean you really got to use it.
I gotta ask, why do we get Hellcats? I mean, I get we're in the Motor City area.
You get it to flex.
Yeah, but it's not like we live near the Bonneville Salt Flats. We have nowhere where you could run it and not hear a little whoop whoop.
That's true. I mean, you do have 696 from like 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., but
For how long though? But for how long?
Not for long, like for a mile until you hit some state troopers.
Exactly.
Hey.
We just need more like official drag strips in the area. That's what we need.
We have a few, but they're like in the boonies though.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like now that there's like more and more like desert parts of Detroit where it's like there's a chance that there is no saving, we could put in.
We'll get to that part later, Basil. We could put it in. We could put it on Conant. I'm playing. We can't put it over there. Anyway, let's move on. Oh, speaking of cars, Basil and Marcel, I know you heard about this story about Bianca Chambers, how she had her car stolen. She tracked her car for a few days. She confronted the man who stole her car, went to the barbershop, dragged him out of the barbershop by his dreads, had it on camera, and then he got arrested, citizens arrested, all that stuff. So first of all, you steal a car. Second of all, you get tracked. Third of all, you get dragged out of the barbershop by a woman. A barbershop by a woman.
Dragged by his edges. God damn.
She wasn't playing.
She grabbed him like he was a hoe. She grabbed him like he was one of her hoes.
She just grabbed him. She a pimp.
Okay, now I'm curious because this sounds pretty extreme for a car. What do we know? What kind of car it was?
It was a Mercedes.
Okay, then yeah. If you were going to say something like it was a Chevy Beretta, it's like,
yeah, let it go.
What?
Let it go. Let it go, girl. But it was a Mercedes. She dragged him out the barbershop by his dreadlocks. And to make sure he didn't escape, she slashed her own tires. This nigga ain't leaving at all. And
she slashed his own tires?
She slashed her own tires, then it went inside the barbershop and yanked him out by his dreadlocks.
I hope she didn't do like 1 or 3 because insurance don't cover that.
Hey, she was just trying to confront her thief. That was cool. Speaking of not cool, I know y'all heard about this. A woman who was on the most wanted list was caught after she asked about the reward money for her own arrest.
Because she tried to turn herself in.
No. She was on the most wanted post on Facebook, and she asked about the award money for herself. About her.
No. Here's the thing, though. That was more of just a kind of a flex, kind of like the whole like catch me outside. How about that?
Catch me outside. How about that? Yeah, but you geolocated now. They know where you are now.
I didn't say she was smart, but it's basically kind of like, you know how like when you hear those old like cowboy westerns where it's like, we want this person dead or alive. It's like, that much? I thought I was worth more.
Yeah.
That's basically what it was. Is she was seeing like how much of a flex, like, I'm worth $500K. Are you?
But are you though?
Well, she probably went for a bag of Doritos and a pack of gum.
No, here's the thing. No. Marcel, like I said, anytime someone knows that they're on a most wanted and they're asking asking that sort of question, it's not for them to try to get the money themselves. It is strictly just like, I'm worth that much. I'm that big. Like, I'm that big of a catch. Because it literally, you get people that do get excited where it's like, they want to see how much they get. It's almost like a score. Like, you know how when we think of games as kids where it's like, oh yeah, it's literally, that's what it starts becoming for some criminals.
But for this woman, she was just dumb.
Oh yeah, no.
Speaking of dumb things, the Detroit Pistons unveil plans for a courtside club at Little Caesars Arena.
I'm not gonna lie, that actually sounds pretty cool though.
Now, I don't think I don't know if you guys have been to a game lately, but there's a lot of air balls. So, hope y'all paying attention behind the rim.
Here's the thing though, too. This is also at the same place where the Red Wings also play. Something tells me that it may first be unveiled for the Pistons, but I have a feeling it's more for the Red Wings visitors. Like those
It's definitely more for the Red Wings visitors.
I mean, it can't be for the Red Wings because that portion where they have the actual like courtside stuff, that's gonna be ice.
Well, okay, then how can it be?
It's for the Pistons.
How can it be a courtside club?
It's behind the. You know how they have like the stands behind it where it's like an extension, like this like a accordion stands.
Yeah,
they just take those out and put a huge club there.
Okay, now that just sounds kind of dumb. Why would you put all that effort for just one sport when you could have both your sports utilizing it?
I mean, you can't. The both of them can't utilize it because basketball is smaller than hockey. The court.
No, I get that, but
the arena is built for hockey. However, they take off the ice, and the ice is like this huge like box. And then you have basketball when they take the ice away, and the basketball court's only this much.
You got about several rows of seats when you
you have a good 10 to 20 rows of seats going up, connecting to the lower bowl. And that's
I haven't been to Little Caesars Arena yet, but you are basically describing hockey dimensions to someone that goes to hockey games. So I know what
have you been
Ohio has hockey?
Have you been to have you been to an Eastern game, an Eastern basketball game?
God, the only thing I've gone for Eastern anything was
that's a multi-purpose arena though.
Yeah. They took away the seats in the back so they can have like this little lounge area, and that's basically what LCA is doing.
Do college sports have like do college like arenas like football, basketball have like VIP suites?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, depending on where you go. Like, believe it or not, Toledo.
I know for sure that the boosters get those.
Yeah, Michigan has it. Eastern definitely has it. State definitely has it.
Toledo has it. We have it at the Glass Bowl for football.
Mm-hmm.
It's only on one side, but
it's the same here. Same with mine. It's more like a tent area than anything else.
Oh no! Ours is like
ours is indoors.
Ours is indoors, where it's certain floors of it is for the media, and the others are just.
Of course, for the media, yeah, I understand that. I've been in a press box before at Ford Field.
Yeah, that's basically how it is. But
that's for media. It's their job for that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Only some of them are for media. The rest are for VIP.
For like VIPs and like owners and like season ticket. Yeah. Will pay a lot of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's amazing. So I'm looking forward to doing it. It's only for season ticket holders / courtside seat holders. So
that's the same thing.
No. You have to be a season ticket holder and courtside. So I can't get into them. I'm not a courtside.
Chris. That is a jip right there. That is a.
However, if someone wants to pay for me to get into the Players Club, you know what I'm saying. Wink, wink.
Wait, how much does it even cost to be a season ticket holder?
Let me just say it's in the 5 digits.
For Detroit?
Mm-hmm. It's in the 5.
Are you guys worth it though?
Yeah. Yes, we are. We got number 1 pick next week. Cade Cunningham.
No. That's the NHL draft. That's this week.
Oh, watch the NHL draft.
Oh yeah.
I am.
I'm just curious.
Just for notes. Seattle.
Curious to see who Seattle like steals from the other teams.
No. That's today. That's today, Basil.
They have the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Basil. The expansion draft for Seattle is today.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen any of the results though. Look, I don't know if you were listening earlier, Marcel, but I've been blind for 3.5 weeks. I'm just now starting to get better with putting these steroids in my eyes.
You should be fine.
When you guys see me back on camera, like my eyes are gonna be jacked.
Like huge?
Yeah, they're gonna just be bulging.
Hey, hi guys, how's it going?
They'll be flexing like crazy. They'll even be straight. No, I'm joking.
No, they won't. All right. Speaking of straight, The the Detroit Lions preseason games are going to be aired on national TV on the NFL Network. Next, the Red Wings will have their preseason opener against the Buffalo Sabres on September 30th, 2021. Skip. And the Tigers.
Actually, I am kind of curious to see how that one's going to go because we finally officially retired a player that we had for 15 years.
Oh, who was that?
Zetterberg. We finally officially retired him. Like, what was it, a month ago? Like, my God, he was still on our roster. No wonder why we can't afford anything.
That's true.
Like, no wonder why we have crap players. He's been sucking up our salary cap all these years.
Sure has. How much was he getting paid?
I don't know, but he was still
technically the player. Talking about
Zetterberg.
Henrik Zetterberg.
Oh yeah,
it's a lot of money. If we couldn't get all the top stuff, we could have got Ovechkin.
Like shoot, I haven't even seen him like consistently play since 2018. So I didn't even know.
It's a 12-year, $73 million contract.
Huh.
Is that what that was?
That's what it was all the way through the 2021 season, God. Which I assume ends this year or next year.
Is this what it feels like to be a Mets fan?
Yes, for Bobby.
No. It's much worse. It's much worse.
Speaking of Mets fans, we got Jonathan Trey Scott.
What's up, bro? What's up, y'all?
What's up? We got Jonathan Trey Scott in here, our special guest for today. So New York, are you a Mets fan or a Yankees fan?
Yankee fan all day.
Oh, okay, all right. We got Yankees.
You did ask them down bad recently.
Oh, yeah. I know it's crazy. They loaded with talent, but it's just like a terrible team this year, which is crazy. Mm-mm. But it's because the pitchers this year, the pitchers have been cheating this year because they put like the little gunk on the
salve and whatnot.
Yeah. And I think that's why I'm blaming it on that.
How do you just crack down on that this season?
I don't know.
You said what now?
How do you just crack down on that this season?
That's what's crazy though, because they said it's just been out of control this year. Like they said, most years it's like it always has happened, but it's just so prevalent this year because all of the balls are sticky.
Yeah, that's right. I believe statistically wise, the strikeouts were much more than like the actual hits.
Yeah.
I guess they was like, there's more of that. So what's going on with these pitchers? That's what happened.
Yeah.
But the baseball contracts are lit though.
Oh yeah, you're not lying.
Once I saw that one guy's contract, I was like, maybe I should go outside and start practicing.
It's like soccer then baseball as like two highest paying sports.
Yeah.
I just saw Messi's contract.
He getting paid.
Woo!
Just to sit out there.
Yeah, it's insane.
What's his name? Neymar, his contract was like 220-something million for like 2 or 3 years. I'm like, wow, God damn.
And all he has to do is just roll on the grass.
Shut up, Bezos.
Oh damn! Don't play it like that.
That's all he does. He just flops. So I mean, hey,
if you get paid to flop, I mean, what were Messi's number? What was Messi's number? Is like in the
it's up there,
thousands, millions range.
Well, he's a 96 on FIFA, so he better get a lot.
Yeah. You know what? Hold on. I do have a question though. So, Jonathan, you are from New York, so being Yankees fan, is it kind of is there like a geographic like division of where more likely you're going to find a Met or a Yankee fan?
Yeah. So Mets fans, since the Mets are like basically the division is kind of like suburbs and city because the Mets are in Queens. So basically that's quote unquote Queens is Long Island. So basically majority of fans in Queens and like Long Island, like Hempstead and going out to the Hamptons, Suffolk County, like most of those people are Mets fans. And then you got to see that Brooklyn, they kind of people in Brooklyn, they kind of tend to the Yankees now because basically the hat, like it's iconic, but they used to be Dodgers fans because Brooklyn was heavily Dodgers. So all of the older people like for example, like Bernie Sanders' generation, they remember when the Dodgers were in Brooklyn. And so like, even in my family, that's why I still like the LA Dodgers, because I like I got a National League team and American League team. So my American League team is the Yankees, but my National League team is the Dodgers, because that was like my grandfather's favorite team was like the Dodgers, and he liked the Braves because of Hank Aaron. And like a lot of Black people that migrated from Georgia end up in New York. So it's like you got a lot of Braves fans too, like of the older Black men. And then with Yankees fans, Yankees is like the quote unquote the team in the team in the hood, because it's like their stadium is like right in the Bronx, and that's like the quote unquote back in the day that was the slums. So if you look at the 70s Yankees, that's why you get like the Bronx is burning, because it's like during the World Series they had when Reggie Jackson hit the 3 home runs, all you saw was like flames around the stadium, because the owners of like the apartment buildings, they were so ran down, they used to burn them for the insurance money, because you got more money than actually renting out the places. And it's so funny because those, if you go to those areas, it's like they were burning down those buildings. It was ran down in Harlem. Now that's like the best real estate in New York now.
That's crazy. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, too.
I was going to say, that's from the correctly, that came down to a certain G word. That's the key word today.
I have 2 questions. Yeah. I have actually 2 questions. What is, aside from Madison Square Garden, which is pretty much the third, was it the fifth version of MSG?
Yeah.
What is the most well-known New York arena?
Well, it would have been Yankee Stadium before it got demolished.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I said. It's probably well, and then let me use the technical terms too, just break it down to people that's not here. So when you actually live in NYC, we refer to New York as Manhattan. And then you actually refer to the other boroughs as like actually like Brooklyn, you from Manhattan. So and New York is interchangeable with the city. So if you're actually in Manhattan, in which we call the city, that's actually considered New York. And so your address is like New York, New York. That means it's in Manhattan. But even though you're like from Brooklyn, you wouldn't say like you say I'm from New York because it's a part of the city, but we refer like I'm from Brooklyn. And so that's kind of like the breakdown. So if you're talking about the iconic stadiums, I can say in New York, it's talking about the city. It's always MSG. They would have had it used to be Polo Grounds and stuff back in the day where the Giants
that's what I remember. Polo
used to play. So it was Polo Grounds, but like Polo Grounds end up getting redeveloped. And that's when the Giants, they end up moving, actually Giants and Jets, they moved their stadium to New Jersey.
Yeah, across the river.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But that's the most iconic. And then after that is like, and what is it? Flushing Meadows, like this tennis stadium, like where the US Open is at. That's like the other iconic stadium.
Yeah, that's what I saw. That's what when I went to New York for the family reunion. I was like, what is that? I was like, that's where they have the US Open. I was like, because it's a weird stadium. It looks so weird. But
yeah, it is. It is.
Is it like a dome or whatnot?
Or it's like the stands are like this.
Yeah, it's almost like an old like ancient Roman amphitheater type of deal.
Yeah,
I would say the third best like New York stadium is like Barclays Center.
Yeah, I can put Barclays on it just because the design was like so amazing, like when it first came, like with the grass on the top and everything. And then it flows well, like it was designed well, and it definitely flows well within that space. And the funny thing about it, which is a sad irony, is that where Barclays is located, that was supposed to be the new stadium for the Brooklyn Dodgers. But basically, Walter O'Malley, who owned the Dodgers at the time, he could not come to an agreement with Robert Moses. And that's why that site, because Robert Moses would not give him the site. And that's why the Brooklyn Dodgers end up moving to LA, because Walter O'Malley and Robert Moses butted heads. And a lot of people don't know that. But that's why the Brooklyn Dodgers end up leaving for LA.
That's a good history lesson. I did not know that.
Yeah.
You know, I get now when you bring up Robert Moses, that does remind me of how anytime I do hear Robert's name get brought up, either in class, Chris being an urban planner, I'm a historic preservationist, but I still do some urban planning classes because I want to work alongside them. Anytime I hear Robert Moses' name, he's never in quite a good light. So is that just because of just what it's like looking back at it now? He wasn't that great of a guy, or is it just like he never was back then?
But I think
it's a cheap ass to me.
Yeah,
No.
so I think
Where'd he go?
I think he froze.
where if you're looking at it from a per city planning, design, engineering standpoint, he's one of the greatest planners and city just guys to ever live. And just even his political squavy and navigating stuff where you will never see that done again. And so I always admire his ability to do big, ambitious projects, and just working in New York for so many years. It's hard to do big infrastructure projects in New York. It's like so much of like the infrastructure is outdated, but you got the union issues, you got like the mob still involved in stuff heavy that a lot of people don't know, but they're still involved heavy with a lot of contracts. So I respect on that end, but then I also vilify him because he it's a lot of times when he made planning decisions that was like so outwardly racist that it's like you did not have to do that. Like you had other alternatives that like save more homes, or you didn't have to like be that way. Like one thing that he made the parkways out in Long Island and stuff, they made the bridges like the bridges, like I forgot what they call it. Like it's the when is it kind of like when you go under a bridge and they have like the level of foot where it's like 8 feet, 9 feet? The clearance.
Oh,
so yeah, the clearance level. So he made the clearance level so low when they built the bridges over the crosstown expressways and the parkways, so that people from the inner city, a bus could not travel out to those beaches and to those parks because the bus cannot get clearance over the bridges. And it's deliberately because the New York City buses going out to the suburbs, they needed at least 10 feet of clearance. He made all the bridges 7 feet of clearance. And so that was deliberate to keep lower income people from going to like the beaches like Jones Beach and the state parks and coming out to the suburb. That was intentional that was segregation by design. So he was one of those people that was a big proponent of segregation by design.
Okay, so we're gonna take a pause right now. So people who aren't aware of what's going on right now, we have we just finished our What You Do in Detroit section. Please subscribe to the podcast, anchor.fm/crisscrosscorner/support. We have our special guest today, Jonathan Trey Scott, urban planner, political scientist, native New Yorker, friend of the podcast, friend of mine, and a father, 2 twins, which I have met as well. Living here now in Detroit. So he just moved, so I don't know where he is. We're not going to disclose his address, but he lives in the city of Detroit. So I just want to first, before we get back into our discussion of New York and Robert Moses, we're going to talk about Albert Cobo as well and gentrification. Well, first we know where you're from. You're from New York, but we don't know which borough are you from. Are you from Brooklyn?
Oh yeah, I'm from Brooklyn. Bed-Stuy, do or die.
All right.
Always gotta put the do or die though to it.
Do or die.
Biggie made it famous.
Hey. What is your journey from New York to Detroit? How did that happen? Is he still here?
New York, I started, I was working like with the MTA and Long Island Railroad. So I was kind of doing a public engagement on this project called the Long Island Third Rail, because they were adding a track onto the build capacity on that line. And then I was working with the Tappan Zee Bridge. So I started out in New York just doing a lot of setting up a lot of public engagement offices, and I would handle the public engagement for like the large infrastructure projects like East Side Access, the Tappan Zee Bridge, the Long Island Third World. And I worked in a lot of business improvement districts like facade programs and stuff. So I had my hands all over the city, because if you're in urban planning, it's easy to really get in certain spaces and kind of make an opportunity when you're fresh out. And after I left New York, I did a lot of work in like New England, like in Rhode Island, Boston. And so basically my colleague, Alan Penniman, I met him in like Boston, and basically we were both working in Rhode Island. And so it's funny, when you work in New England, it's not a lot of African Americans in the planning space. And so we was invited to like this conference in Boston. I think it was called Black in Design, and it was at Harvard. And so we were invited to this conference, and basically Alan ended up meeting the director at the time, Maurice Cox. Mm-hmm. And so Maurice was building out the city of Detroit planning department, because if people don't know, Detroit had a robust planning department like in the 50s and the early 60s, but people kind of revolted against planners because of the urban renewal and what happened to Black Bottom. And so when basically Coleman Young was hired, Coleman Young was like, the hell with the fucking planners. So excuse me, the language, I'm sorry, but that's Coleman Young used that kind of language, so I'm sorry, because his kids probably listening to it. But that's Coleman Young's type language, because he said that word for word, so basically verbatim. And so basically the planning really suffered in Detroit, and Maurice had to basically come and build the whole department from scratch, because before Maurice came, they were just pushing paperwork and administering CBD, community development block grant funding. And so basically Maurice said when he came to the department and he looked around, he noticed it was more accountants in the office than planners. Oh, wow. For it to be a planning department. And so he was recruited Alan first, and Alan, he came out to Detroit, was here for a whole year. I was basically getting tired of planning, because it's like one thing that it gets wary being in the planning profession is that there's not a lot of diversity at times. So it's hard to really kind of talk about gentrification, social equity, and push a lot of these different initiatives forward that not only talk about the built environment, but talk about equity within the built environment. And so I was kind of running into blow blocks and not being able to do the work I do. So Alan, basically a position opened up in Detroit, and basically Alan kept plugging me for the position, because I was about to get out of planning and just open a business and just open a restaurant or something. That was like what I really wanted to do. So Alan, he said a word in. Maurice was like, tell Trey to come out here, meet with us and all that. So I basically hopped on the plane. I came out here and me and talked to Maurice and stuff. And Maurice had sold me on the job, and I ended up coming to Detroit. And that's how I ended up moving to Detroit. And then on top of that, he sold me because he was like, we got this project with this train station. It's this old train station that's being redeveloped. It's this neighborhood called Corktown. We want you to project manage this and all this stuff. And it was so funny, because when I was in Rhode Island, one of my projects was working on the train station. And I was like, and then I worked on the Long Island Railroad. I'm like, why does my whole planning career revolve around old train stations?
Now, ours is pretty historic. So
tell you what, the old train stations have a lot more character than the new ones.
The whole Corktown is historic.
That's true. We're a historic Irish neighborhood.
Now, funny enough that you bring up the train station, though, we are currently with Eastern. One of our faculty members is working alongside one of the architectural teams that is going about the renovations with Michigan Central.
Station.
I can't think of the developer name now.
What's Ford? But I think they have an actual developer working with them on that project, because it looks pretty nice. Well, it used to look crappy.
Well, no, I'm trying to think of it. It's like a collection that Powell is working with, though, where it's.
If you don't know, it's okay.
Yeah, it'll come to me later.
Yeah. So, what are you currently working on right now, Jonathan?
Oh, so what I'm currently working on is Well, I'm kind of in limbo right now, but basically what's happening is that we won a grant from HUD for choice neighborhood grant. It's $30 million to build affordable housing and a lot of different projects and bring social services to like the Corktown area. So that's basically been like my biggest coup, my biggest coup for this year. So but that's like what I waved my flag on, because it's like I wrote a lot of that grant for the city of Detroit, and it was a whole team working on it, but I wrote a lot of the initial work and did a lot of the kind of my planning study built a lot of the work that went into that HUD grant. So the fact that the city won it was like groundbreaking. And so basically I'm in this process where we're going to be starting a new planning study. So I became, I oversee like all this, just a background to me. I work mainly in Council District 6. So it's basically like Midwest and all of Southwest Detroit. So I kind of cover that area. And so we're going to kick off a new planning study in it's not in Southwest Detroit, in District 6. And it's the Midwest planning study. So I'm basically doing all the preliminary work, because that's going to be a heavy lift, because I'm basically the project manager and a lot of that work is going to fall on me. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Okay.
How would you define affordable housing? Because I've been in Corktown and all those other areas. The first thing that people think of when they think of affordable housing is, well, condos, those big old houses that you see when driving up to Comerica Park, those brownstones and whatnot.
So I think first off, we got to get in the history of affordable housing. I think affordable housing has like a bad stigma to it, because when people think about affordable housing, they automatically associate it with low income Blacks. And it's like affordable housing is not necessarily housing it's a wider range of affordability, because you're talking about, say, for example, like the college graduate just first out of school that only makes $45,000 on that first job. Affordable housing is finding them a place where they can stay, where you have kind of like a mix of housing typologies, while also having housing for mixed income. So it's like everyone at every end of
the. So we lost him. He froze up there again.
They think about like extremely lower income individuals, and I think by us seeing that, we kind of have a stigma towards affordable housing, where people don't see that affordable housing is more than just providing it for people that, say, for example, only make $10,000 or $15,000 a year. We also have that missing middle, where it isn't enough housing for people making, say, between like $25,000 and probably $60,000 a year, where people that's making salaries like that can barely find housing and stuff. So I feel like we're in this housing crunch, because if you look at most housing developments nowadays, the only housing that's being built is like for luxury housing, like condos, places starting at $300,000, $400,000, and you need some housing that's starting out like 120, like 130, 150, 160, like housing up there, because it's being extremely hard to find a house that's affordable out their price. And you start seeing, like, especially in the central region of the city of Detroit, you start to see like houses like 400,000. Like even when we was doing a planning study with Corktown, it's like those housing numbers, the housing in Corktown and North Corktown is literally per square foot highest in the city times 3 or 4. And so it's like insane on how much how properties appreciated. It was like this guy that used to own Pony Ride, which was a co-working space, and it was a warehouse. He bought that warehouse for $50,000 and he sold it for $6 million. We had a building that sold. It was one building on Michigan Ave. In 3 days, that thing changed hands 4 times. And the first person bought it for 50, sold it for 120. The other one bought it for 120, sold it for 180. The other one bought it for 180, sold it for like 300,000. And it was crazy because I'd never seen a building change hands that fast within an amount of days, and in person end up like it ended up selling for 300,000, but somebody had bought it for like 100,000. So it's just crazy speculation going on.
Wow.
Probably just sold it to make a quick buck. I mean, property goes for a lot these days.
Yeah.
Now, and then what's? Oh, sorry.
In that area, probably went up because like you said, it was in Corktown, right?
Yeah.
Corktown, from when I believe Tiger Stadium went down in 08, 09. So after that, when they cleared out all that blight, that's when property prices went up in that area.
Yeah.
So you're not just judging the building, you judging the whole area.
That's what also happened.
To buy this building.
Yeah, that also is what happened on Woodward. Once they built the arena and that M1 line, properties also went up.
It went up. As soon as they built that M1, it went up.
Because I even did a little study with already, like, funny that we're talking about Corktown, because I did kind of like what's going to be some of the bad things that's going to come off of it right away once even the train station gets done. You don't even have just Corktown. We also have North Corktown right next to it that even financially, when it comes to their yearly income, is even worse off, like 20,000. They're going to have even a harder time later on trying to afford their property taxes, and that they're going to also have to run out. So, where are they going to go?
Yeah. So before we get to that, we're going to do a little background and definitions about what we're about to talk about, because I think Basil is trying to hint at a G word that we were trying to talk about earlier, but some people,
I just have one more question. Chris, I just have one more question. That's it.
Yeah, one more question.
As urban planners and historians such as you guys, do you think slumlords have been like primarily taking advantage of the bad stigma that comes with affordable housing?
What do they call them? Slumlords? No.
Yeah, I definitely
I see what he's trying to ask. He's basically saying, like, you think of the term slumlord, do you automatically assume anyone that's in control of a poorly run, low income estate?
Yeah.
Are they as greasy as we like to portray them in books and other media?
I mean, that's true. That's definitely true, because I believe that's possible, because I don't want to name names, but in Detroit, we know that, yeah, I want to name names, because I figured it out once I first came to Detroit, and I figured out like, because like I just say like what we deal with in Detroit is like 5 major it's about 3 or 4, probably about 3 or 4 or 5 major, like, because I feel like it's the game of monopoly and it's the game of power at the top, where you have Mayor Duggan, and he basically has to wrestle with these real estate barons to basically wrestle on stuff to do any development within the city. And it's an issue that was called I can't think of the book. It was a book where it talked about that. I think it's Gentrification and the Real Estate State, and it's basically talking about how most cities, because real estate power has kind of basically jumped up to be the primary power that's happening, that's controlling urban areas now, is basically the real estate mogul. Like, think about your Donald Trumps, your Stephen Rosses and stuff. They kind of hold out. They hold undue sized power within like major urban areas. Like, we can talk about Detroit. I want to name names, but it's the Little Caesars people, the ambassador.
That says a lot. You said the Little Caesars pizza. No more.
Yeah, that's it.
That was a little too close.
Too close.
Yeah, that's a little too close. Ambassador Bridge.
Yeah,
I can't. Don't even get me started on the M family.
Still got beef with the
Cleveland Cavaliers.
The Cleveland Cavaliers. All right, we know what we're talking about now. All right, so
you're dropping too many hints, man.
So as we talk about that, because that also goes into the G word that you already said, gentrification, which is a very touchy subject, a touchy topic in the community today. Even if you're in the urban planning community, the development community, or not, you know the word gentrification, and it usually has a negative connotation for a good reason. It's the process of where the character of a poor neighborhood or a poor area is changed by wealthier people moving in, improving housing and attracting new business. Sounds okay, right? However, increased investment in the area can be positive. Gentrification is also associated with the displacement of long-term residents, primarily in most of these neighborhoods, low-income Blacks. Those citizens are not able to stay to benefit from those new investments in housing, healthier food options, or better transit infrastructure. Detroit, as well as many other major cities, have had their share of racist housing practices, as we talked about Robert Moses, Albert Cobo, the former mayor of Detroit, who was also huge on racist practices against Black people or people of color of that, to keep minorities down. Based on fear of Black people moving in, and of course we had white flight, and then Blacks had a bad stigma, bad connotation, which led to less investment, causing Detroit to be as it is today. As you can see, most of Detroit is mostly Black. Detroit is some areas, most of Detroit areas are run down, except for downtown, Midtown, Corktown, like Jonathan Trey is working right now, Eastern Market, Boston Edison, North Rosedale, you know, our Avenue of Fashion. Those areas are still kept up, but the rest are, you know, not cared for. Historically, we know why, and we already talked about it.
I was about to say those are huge tourist attractions right there. Corktown, Woodward Avenue.
And we know why.
Belle Isle gets more respect than outside of Detroit.
Well, I mean, Belle Isle was run by the state, so we can't really talk about that now. But some areas, you know, what I would say, I would ask this question to Basil, Marcel, and Jonathan. Do you guys believe that in Detroit's case, is gentrification a good thing or a bad thing?
I'm going to say from a historic preservation standard, for Detroit's case, I'm going to say it will be a bad thing. Only reason why I say that is just because one of the things that we have to constantly combat with time anything gets historically registered or a neighborhood gets designated, first thing that people like to bring up a lot of times is, great, this is going to bring people in, our prices are going to go up, we can't afford anything, we're going to be run out. And like one example was last year, the Burwood Wall was added to the National Register. Now, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. That would be a great thing. That would help, you know, signify, you know, the issues of segregation in Detroit. But problem is now you're going to start getting more visitors. Anytime you have anything that's nationally, you know, historic and registered for it, people do tend to want to move near that to get a piece of the history.
I was saying my Wi-Fi, my bars, and my terrible is coverage. But I said, no, the issue is that in a typical city, District Detroit vision would have been brought by a developer to the city. The city would have been like, okay, this is our vision for it. And they would have literally took publicly owned land and RFP'd it out and brought that vision brought it into reality, where Detroit, they give the city, whoever the administrations at the time, they just give away stuff. And it's like, you don't have any stipulations attached to it to ensure that this vision will be seen, because you can't just give it to private actors and expect them to do stuff that's for the public well-being all the time. You got to keep some of this for leverage, because if the vision for District Detroit was coming from the planning department, you would have automatically changed the zoning for the area. That would have been the first thing. You would have had the vision, and you would have changed the zoning, so you wouldn't have had those parking lots everywhere, because you would have zoned out the parking lots, and you basically would have did.
Wasn't the area, wasn't it a PUD, or was it rezoned to PUD, a planned unit development?
Yeah, I think it was designed like a PDD, like a planned district and stuff. But I mean, it's a lot of stuff where I feel like what we did with Corktown is that when we took the publicly owned land, we basically came up with the choice neighborhood strategy. So we said we want affordable housing, but we're going to RFP this land out to build affordable housing where we're going to keep control of it. And we're not just going to turn the land all the way over to a developer with no stipulations. And I kind of feel like that's what happened with that District Detroit, whether as if it would have been more planning behind it and the planning department led that effort, you would have had like the stadium built, you would have had this other stuff built, but you would have had the apartments and the whole neighborhood factor because the city could have land for developers to actually build what we actually wanted to see in District Detroit instead of turning all the land over to one real estate mogul and saying develop District Detroit, and they don't have to agree to any of the stipulations because it's like at the end of the day, what are you going to do? Like at the end of the day, how does the city, what is the city going to do at the end of the day? And if you look, and it's so funny, like if you really look, like start looking at the zoning around the city and you just drive around, you will look at stuff that doesn't make sense. And then you said they just gave anything away back in those days because you really didn't have no planning department or any analytical ways to think about the decisions you made. Like Coleman Young, a lot of the planning in Detroit, which is so funny, it doesn't happen in the planning department. And this is just historically with Detroit, it happens in the mayor's office. And so it's like they will cut deals and then you'll find out later in the planning department, like, yo, that land was for my planning study. I didn't know y'all gave it away. And you can see that, like, for example, like a thing with the Kwame administration, and I finish off. If you go down Jefferson, like West Jefferson, you can take, it's not continuous. It's cut off at one point. Then you have to literally like go up another street and then turn to hop on Jefferson, but it's not straight through. And the road, they disconnected Jefferson because Kwame's administration, Kwame Kilpatrick's administration, they basically gave that piece of Jefferson to a family, a famous family in Detroit. Like it was a deal they had, and that's why they vacated Jefferson Ave to a certain point. And you never see that in any city where they vacate a major arterial street to a mogul. And stuff like that happens. It's a bunch of stories.
It was the Maroon family.
Yeah.
Because that's
family.
Yo, you're talking about West Jefferson from like the Fort Wayne area to like Rosa Parks. That's all Maroon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, okay. I see it now. I see it.
Because originally it was going to be one of Central Transport's hubs.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Is that the family that owns the Ambassador Bridge?
Every day. Yeah. The Ambassador Bridge is myself. Yeah.
That's the family that I hate.
The Moron family. We can talk about them all day, but
yeah.
Bro, I got beef with all these Detroit owners, man.
I don't.
All of them.
They might be sponsors, but the Maroon family is not going to get a penny from me. Okay. And I don't want any pennies.
You better not take. I will get you if you accept even a penny from them.
Oh, you better not. What other?
The fact that you can just like give out like land like under the tables, just
Oh, sure. You have the city development department under your belt.
Yeah.
Why not?
You run the city, you might as well tell them, hey, give this to them.
And see, kids, this is what we call corruption.
I know about corruption, all right? We lived 4 years with it, all right, okay?
All right, speaking of good things that happen again this week, Jonathan, what do you think about the Joe Louis Greenway project?
I like the project a lot. I think it's definitely we're gonna be kicking off a planning study for the like land that's adjacent to the Joe Louis.
They don't even want them to say anything positive about it.
It's that 2G coverage, fam.
Just during the day at the job. Hello, can everyone hear me?
Hear you.
And now you're starting to come in.
I just I have like one bar. I don't have any more than one bar.
LOL.
And so no, I was saying that I think the project is a good project. We're gonna study where we look at the land that's adjacent to the Joe Louis Greenway alignment, and we're gonna actually do studies on like the different implications on like what it'll mean for that area in terms of like affordability and the different houses. And I think that's important because a land you can see they have like a housing crisis right now because those areas on the belt line just are pretty overnight.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good project.
Explain to me what that project is.
It's a huge, what's it called? Pedestrian / bikeway, like huge, like super huge. Like, have you been down the DeQuinter Cut? So basically, it's an extension of that, but it's going to be huge. It's going to be like it's connecting the riverfront to the DeQuinter Cut to Hamtramck to Highland Park, Dearborn, Southwest Detroit. It's a huge loop.
Yeah, and it'll start from the train station.
Yeah,
you could complete that, but you can't complete the M1 to the suburbs to Detroit.
That's a whole nother story, Marcel. We can't talk about that. Well, we could talk about that on another episode, but that's another. It's about money and power. It's all about money and power when it comes to transportation, especially in Detroit. I can go on transportation in Detroit forever.
As I was gonna say, the one thing that bums me out with doing the Greenway was, and especially like the direction that they're going with the train station, part of me wished that they could have at least maintained, seeing as how Ford says they want to help develop electric train technology and all that, but yet they want to take out all the train tracks so that zero transportation. That's like saying we want to be an innovation in water filtration, but be out in the desert.
I mean, you gotta understand, the history of,
There's a lot of groundwater in the desert. Okay.
The history of the Motor City and trains and cars is a love-hate relationship.
Oh, trust me, I'm aware of the GM public transportation. Oh yeah, they even got to us down here. Dang it!
Mm-hmm.
Our streetcars are now Italian restaurant like booths.
Okay, we're good now. We're going back to the days of trains and automatic stuff. So, hey, I'm all for it.
I just wish there would have been a train system where it would have made transportation to Detroit easier. Like you wouldn't have to take go to Ann Arbor and then take that supposed are they still doing the SEMCOG where they're going to do that train line that can go to Pontiac and then that can go from I forget where it goes from Pontiac to
I think they're already at the Amtrak station, Pontiac to Troy to Detroit to Ann Arbor. But I think it's gonna be like a more faster, like back and forth kind of thing, not like a once every 800 years.
Yeah, but it was gonna utilize the people mover, the Q line, and a bunch of all this stuff. I'm like, okay,
people mover.
Yeah, it was a weird thing where it was like, yeah, if you want to go from Cobo, or have they ever come up with a new name for Cobo Hall yet?
Yes, it's CCF Center.
Okay, so theoretically, you could go from the CCF Center to Chicago, going via People Mover.
Oh heck, no.
To Q Line.
Nah, bro, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, it was a weird whole thing. I was like,
No one even uses the People Mover, and we're gonna get to that in a second. So this is for everybody to answer. So usually during my top 10 list, I do like my own top 10 list, like my own thing. But this week, we're going to do a collaborative study. So in the 1950s and 1960s, Detroit saw its population at its peak around 1.8 million, making it the fourth largest city in the US behind New York City, Chicago, and Philadelphia. Now we are around just below 700,000. So let's just say your appointed mayor or another official that helped Detroit, community development, economic development. What will be the top 10 objectives to get Detroit back to 1.8 million or better. How are we going to make Detroit great again?
I'm not gonna lie, I would bring back streetcars.
That
I would definitely.
that is what are like streetcars or like the Q line or like streetcars like a BRT.
I would definitely make like transportation.
I would have to do
like,
a combination.
Marcel, wait for Basil to stop talking. What did you say, Basil?
I would have to say a combination, just because depending on certain neighborhoods, there's some places where something like the Q line would be great, where there's not a lot of like high volume traffic. But then you'd have to do something where it's like kind of no, like this streetcar is going to get more priority over anything else. Kind of like the HRVs and stuff like that.
Okay. All right, Marcel.
Definitely make transportation between Detroit and other counties more accessible.
For what? Like what? Because we already have freeways.
Buses.
We have buses.
I'm not very good at this, all right?
You gotta be more specific. You gotta be more specific because we already have accessibility to all the counties. Because Detroit has one of the most like best design street designs of all time. So you got to give us better. Like you want like more like a BRT line, bus rapid transit. That's better than SMART because SMART has its hiccups. The city transportation isn't the best.
I don't understand why you have to have like multiple bus companies for just one route. That's just that's like
well, first of all, the city of Detroit has its own transportation. SMART is an actual company that is a pseudo company / public entity for the rest of the suburbs of Detroit. So they're not just the only lines in Detroit are Van Dyke, Woodward, Michigan, Grand River, Gratiot, and Jefferson. So and those are only like the fast routes. So they don't even go to all the stops in Detroit. They just go from the Woodward 8 Mile thing all the way down to downtown with a few stops in between, like the 6 Mile one, which is a huge stop. And I believe Wayne State, because that's the college. That's, obvious. But there's just I understand what you're saying, but like 2 bus companies right now, it's pretty, for the scale of what you're doing right now, it's pretty good. However, would I like them to combine to make a better like system? Yes, that would be that would be amazing.
The only problem though, when you start getting big enough though, just buses doesn't work. Now I would say with how we're losing population, because we used to be pretty big too, because we've lost the population, we could use more buses, but our bus line is about most as we can handle infrastructurally.
Yeah.
But Detroit needs a lot more than just 2 bus companies, even combined.
Yeah, in all the problems with combining both bus companies, because I worked for SMART and I understand, because when I worked for SMART, there were some cities who did not want buses in their city because of the bad stigma buses bring to their city. Cities like, and I said this in my other episode in the beginning of the podcast, gentrification and sundown towns. Livonia does not want SMART because it brings people from the city to their city. Also at Novi in Northfield, they don't want their buses there because it brings unwanted, quote unquote, unwanted people to their city. And we know who they're talking about. So when we combine these cities, we got to understand when we combine infrastructure like that into the suburbs, what of a negative effect it would have on the existing thing we have right now, because we want everybody to come together. However,
Not everyone wants to
It's
come
easy.
together.
It's easy on paper. It's not easy in practice. Sad to say, but it's not easy in practice. And that's just the world we live in. And that also comes from what we said earlier, Robert Moses / Albert Cobo. They wanted us to be separate. And and we're still separate to this day because Detroit is 85% black.
Separate and suffering.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you two. You just ruined the city.
Now, number 8, I would say more investment in property in Detroit. Because I have been on many interviews with developers, and I ask them the same question every time. You're building a house in Ferndale on 8 Mile. What about on the other side of 8 Mile? And it's like, no, there's not enough funds and investment, but you're spending $10 million on this side of 8 Mile though.
We know really what they're really saying.
I know, we know what they're really saying. You know what I'm saying? That goes back to division. Like they don't want to build in Detroit because of the stigma of black people.
Well, I don't even think if it's even so much of that. It's when it comes to developers, kind of like what
they want the best out of it. They want their investment to be an investment that, you know, flourishes, and they don't think of that as a good investment.
Yeah, they want big returns, kind of like what Jonathan was saying with how the property in Corktown was just going from like 125,000 to 6 figures. You know, that's what companies want. God forbid should a company do something out of the kindness of their heart. Right.
Because I know some areas, I think Jonathan was at that one too. We did a tour of the Jefferson Chalmers neighborhood on the east side.
Yeah, I remember that one.
So we had on the east side, like Jefferson towards Lake St. Clair / Detroit River, everything was built. However, on the north side, from like Grosse Pointe to the Chrysler, what's it called? The Chrysler factory. Fields, not a house in sight. And if someone could develop that area, because when Chrysler came in, they just kind of like cut off a vein to Detroit. You can see it like on a map. Like you see the Grosse Pointe, dead area, Chrysler, and then development like Indian Village and all the other wealthier communities going into Detroit. So I think investing in areas that have been taken away or died out because of, you know, the big three. Like Jefferson Commerce, we can make Detroit better.
What about revamping the public school system?
That's another thing. That's why people don't want to invest in Detroit. Like families don't want to invest in Detroit because of, that's a good one, Marcel, is that the school system.
Because if I want to move somewhere and I got kids, I got to think of them first, then myself.
Well, the biggest problem with the school system, how I mentioned corruption.
No, I mean, we Bezo, corruption's all around Detroit. So, and we could talk about that too in another episode. It's hilarious.
Now, Chris, since you brought up the Chrysler plant up in like Sterling Heights and all that, I do have a question.
No. I'm talking about the Chrysler plant in Detroit, off Jefferson.
Oh, okay. So the one that's actually
the one on Jefferson? No, that's not Chrysler.
Yeah, that's Chrysler. We got Chrysler. Yeah. That's what they make that's the truck assembly, I believe.
Okay, now hold on. Now, if I remember correctly, that one's not too new. Like that was only done like what? I think 10 or so years ago.
No, it started about 90s, 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Something like that. Now, oh my God, I forgot. It's 2021. God, I am getting old. It just seems like almost yesterday. But anyway, what I was going to say, though, was how long had those areas already been blighted out and the city just decided because there's no one already in there that they just did that? Like
I could tell you right now, I'm sure you know about GM in Poletown, right?
Oh yeah.
That's basically what happened.
Okay, so there were still people there and they just
Yeah. And then once they built that plant, There's only like one road that goes over there, which is Mac, and it goes over there's a huge bridge. The rest of the roads were cut off, so
Yeah.
you got to go around to get to Mac, then go back down in. So you can.
No, trust me, I'm familiar with Mac.
You can do this. I know you're familiar with Mac, but
probably the best Coney Island I found in that part of town.
Oh, goodness gracious! All right, number 6. What else we got, Basil? You're next.
Well, we already said the corruption, but that's gonna be a whole nother episode.
Yeah. That'd be a great debating episode.
All right. Okay, here's one I will have to say, and it will be kind of a bit of a Debbie Downer, but I would say kind of give up on going back to that 1.4, like that the heydays. Instead, try to invest the flatlands, like basically the brownfields, into something that'd be more communal. Like one thing that I remember seeing even 8 years ago on Anthony Wayne's Parts Unknown, how there were city farms and city farming when he visited Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was genius. I'm like, that's great for food deserts. You don't have to try to go to a convenience store or try to go to your Meijer and stuff like that. That's going to be miles away. You'd have fresh food markets right in the area.
That's good. All right. Jonathan, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. My coverage is just shoddy tonight.
What would you have as an objective to get Detroit back to what it once was, or to make Detroit better again?
Well, I think right now you have to think about climate change, and when you think about climate change, you're going to have a lot of climate refugees that's going to start seeking places like Detroit, where you have kind of like, besides the massive flooding that had happened, we still have like massive amounts of fresh water. It's still like relatively regular weather. So I think the city should start positioning itself as one of the first climate refuge cities, where it's kind of like, climate refuge cities. And we could kind of highlight the opportunities here to try to get some of those people, because that's the only way I see you increasing population to the level that it used to be. Because I'm thinking in about 15 to 20 years, you're going to start seeing a lot of people coming from California and coming from Arizona and all those different places to places like Wisconsin, Ohio, Detroit, all through like state Michigan. Yeah, so that's what I think is like us positioning ourselves as like a climate refuge city.
We thought we knew what we wanted. We want to come back.
Okay, now I gotta ask you, Chris and Jonathan. This is something that I never thought I'd ever hear before until my first urban planning class.
Yeah.
But have you guys heard of the term eco-gentrification? When the whole
I heard that before.
Do you think there's a possibility that when you're getting like your climate change promotion or your refugees and stuff like that, do you see another issue or another side of gentrification that Detroit could be facing then? Could be the eco-gentrification?
Yeah, you see that right now, because with a lot of times it's like a lot of people move to Detroit and they think of Detroit as like this vacant canvas where they can do anything and we call it open space ventures. So you have a lot of these businesses within Detroit and stuff. And that was an issue with Northport Town. Is like you had a lot of those urban farming people that they were highly against us when we wanted to do like affordable housing. And it's like, well, we want pheasant farms and we want this. And I was like, well, if we look at the neighborhood and ask majority of the neighborhood, they want affordable housing, but it would be this pheasant farm group and like this agriculture group that moved, and I don't want it to be an issue of race, but that's what it fell around racial lines, where the Black people that lived in the neighborhood, it was like, this used to be a functional neighborhood with stores and businesses that we walked to. Everything was close by, and now it wasn't always vacant and ran down like this. We want to see businesses and stores back. And then you have kind of that tension between people that come to Detroit and see the open land and they want to do open space ventures. So you do have that issue where there's butting heads in a lot of neighborhoods.
Yeah. Now that was one thing when I brought up try to use some of the flat space that's vacant for urban farming. That was one, like pretty much the one aspect that I knew was going to be the downside of it. But it was because of issues like food deserts. It's kind of like a balancing point of, it's the one that could teeter-totter to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of, if I was in charge, I would combine both your ideas together. Like, you can have the affordable housing, however, you could incorporate the urban farm into the area, like have like, like a quote unquote corner store that Detroit's known for. Corner store says liquor store, and then have like the urban farm pretty much attached to it with all their, like, of course, in like North Corktown, there's so much space that you can acquire to make that happen. But I know a lot of affordable housing in that area. I think Jonathan can attest to this. Won't be for the everyday like me. I won't be able to afford that once all that stuff's built up.
Oh yeah. Well, I think
won't be able to afford it.
I think overall you'd have to go neighborhood by neighborhood, where it's like, okay, does this neighborhood need their food issues solved more? Like, is there enough affordable housing but not enough of food sources? Mm-hmm. Versus does this area really need housing?
And I guess like some people think, I mean, I'm not saying you basically, but a lot of people think that Detroit has a huge food desert. I mean, it's slowly going away because we have the incorporation of the two Myers that we just put in on the west side and on Woodward. A new Meyer that's coming downtown. We have a lot of neighborhood stores. Southwest Detroit, East Side, of course. There's pockets. There's a lot of pockets. I'm gonna say that there's few pockets, but there's a lot of pockets that don't have readily access to food.
Right, and that's what I would want to try to address.
North Corktown is one of those areas. However, I would say, however, in that area, I wouldn't say most of the people don't have access to it. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't even quite see
that had it in the neighborhood.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it like right next door, figuratively? Isn't Corktown, North Corktown, basically right next to Mexican Town?
Yeah, it's the North Corktown is divided by 75, and then Mexican Town is across 96. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I guess they
have what's the Honeybee Market is over there. Pretty nice.
Yeah, so they're not as bad.
They're not as bad as you like say Gricksdale or Petoskey and Stego, but I mean, it's still a problem that we're slowly fixing.
Now, there was one thing that someone tried to tell me was, as an option, was if you get big enough, if you do like the big apartments public housing, if you make it large enough, you could do rooftop gardening, like farming, but I don't know how efficient that would be with how many units you would put in though.
True. Yeah. But yeah, so you said food, you said more food options. Food store options. All right, so our top three. Jonathan, you have one?
Where we at? Top 3 for what now?
Top 3. We're doing our top 10 list of how to make Detroit great again. So we're gonna do our top 3.
Okay,
now.
so another one. Let me see, because I should know this off the top of my head. It's just basically you need more people politically involved than politically active. It's like most of the time is what I notice, like in this city, is that it's a lot of people that come out for presidential elections, but they don't come out for local elections. And so if you actually see the turnout for presidential elections is drastically higher. It's like around somewhere like 85% of eligible voters. It's like, but for local elections, it's like around 32% of eligible voters. And it's like insane that the gap is that big. And a lot of times, like being in the city, it's a lot of people running for council, of running for different offices. And it's like, I could tell you like the first thing about their platform. And so I feel like more so that if people were politically engaged, you would have high quality people. Cause a lot of times you see the protesters and the activists in the street, like they'll complain about like many people that's in office, but it's like, if you see the voter turnout rates, it's like, well, you're not coming out to run for election. At the end of the day, you're on the outside where you can be on the inside influencing policy. So that's one thing that I would like to see.
Yeah. And just to go off on your point, I just got my absentee ballot today. I don't know most of these people. I didn't even know there was an election next week or in 2 weeks. So I think last election, the last 2 elections, the governmental, I don't know how to say that, the governor's election and the presidential election to get Trump out was probably the best voter turnout I've ever seen in my life. And I've been here for a minute. So I guess we need to be more informed, not just at the Senate, governor and presidential level. It needs to be at the city council level.
Local. That's one thing that I guess I have enough luck with, is because I'm in a part, like in the Toledo area, where the government involvement is so little. It's like, when things are going to happen. It sucks that it's more or less all the same families, but at least when the elections are. So like how you said you didn't even know there was an election coming.
There's an election. That's probably why a lot of people are mad that the city's not working for them, because obviously we don't know who we're voting for. Or who's even our representative of our part of the city to help us get stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Whereas with us, we know who we're getting. We're just disgruntled with what options we're given because we know. It's like, oh crap, now we have to go with the one that sucks the least.
Just run for mayor, Basil.
Ooh. I have thought about getting into politics, but I don't know, Trump kind of ruined it for those that, when go, shoot their mouth.
Yeah, you can't do that. You gotta go on.
They'll be like, oh great, he's gonna be another Trump. But like, no, I swear I'm not.
Oh well. However, all right, number 2. We already talked about bringing streetcars back. However, if there was a possibility, I'm not saying this is like, if
you're going to say subways, Chris.
I am going to say that. You want to know why? Every major city has one.
Here's the problem. Here's the reason why I said streetcars and not subways. Okay. Where exactly, how would you lay out the track system?
Oh,
that's the one.
I got a whole map ready, bro. I can share it on a separate episode.
I mean, you do that because at least with a streetcar, what's nice about it is you can have your central hubs that kind of go around, not into the downtown area. They can surround the downtown.
I have that too, Basil.
Yeah, that's why streetcars are easier to do than subways.
I have a whole transit map, bro. It can work. However, there's a lot of political stuff and geographical things that could mess it up. However, it can happen. I'm not saying in a perfect world it could happen. However, we have corruption / political blockades and everything that didn't make it happen. So
Also, aging infrastructure that would make it even harder to do funding wise.
Yeah. However, like I said, this is imaginary. This is imagine if you're in charge, what might happen. So yeah, subway would be a good idea.
See, I would hate to think what's underneath the city. If I had to try to bore underneath, it's like, oh my gosh, forget a subway. You just need a whole new. You need to move the city elsewhere if you're going to restart. Like, I feel like that's how it would be if I was a like underground developer for you guys.
LOL. All right, what would it be? Let's collaborate.
I know it's going to sound weird, but I would say more options or restart former options that we had for Detroit River transit. Because even though we have the Ambassador Bridge and even though we have the tunnel and we're going to be getting the Gordie Howe Bridge, if we could start kind of, especially since we're not getting big shipping anymore in the Detroit River as much as we used to, bring back ferries. Because if we could try to shuffle as many people over the border back and forth, it would help with money.
How so?
Well, one is Canadians love to buy our gas. So if they want to come here and spend more of their money on our economy, sweet. And we like to go there a lot of times just for tourism and random hijinks.
Yeah, but would a ferry help that, or would it?
It would.
I hate water.
I'm just saying, try to do as many options as we could, because right now we have just 2, in the future 3. But if we could have, like, say 4 or 5 within the Detroit area, I'm not talking going all the way up to Port Huron for the Blue Bridge or whatever, but just local, that could help with, transit, trying to get the money moving more often. And with more money, more development.
Trust me, that new bridge is going to bring a lot of money. Trust me. Because I think the Ambassador Bridge is only 4 lanes across. Tunnel's only 2 lanes. The new bridge is probably going to be 6 lanes across.
Now here's what sucks when you bring up the Ambassador Bridge. There's times when chunks of it come off, so they have to close an entire lane. So there's times it could be down to 3 or even 2.
Which causes all that truck stacking.
Yeah, because since it's owned by the Maroon family, it's mostly used by their stupid trucks. Yeah. Hence why if we had more lanes, the Maroon family could do whatever they want with the Ambassador Bridge. And then regular people
people take the new ones. That's basically, I think, what they're going to do. However, I think in the future that bridge is coming down.
Oh, with how they're not maintaining it. It's only a matter of time. That being said, I'm still going to use the tunnel more often, even when the Gordie Howe gets done. I'll still use the tunnel.
Of course, it's downtown.
You're in
the mix.
Yeah, it already puts you right, and all the stuff that I like of Windsor is right there on the surrounding parts.
Yeah, right outside.
But the Gordie Howe, though, would be great for if you're trying to go anywhere that's not Windsor. Like if you're trying to go to Toronto or trying to go just anywhere in Canada, that'll be the way to go because it's directly hooked up to the Canadian highways.
Yeah, and the Canadian highway stuff was done in 2014. It was like, we're ready. USA was like, but nah, we're not ready.
No, man, he's like, over my dead body. It's like, is that all it takes?
Yeah. So, Jonathan, what do you think before we get out of here? I don't think you see anymore.
You said for number 1?
Yeah.
The Pistons need to be better.
All right. That's been another edition of the Chris Corner. I'm playing Jonathan.
Boy, he's really aiming for that imaginary part that you said before. I was trying to go realistic.
Jonathan's trying to be a co-host.
Pistons, Lions. Dre.
Nothing's trying to be a co-host. He's trying to go on my Pistons. We went to that. I forgot what game we went to, Jonathan, but that was pretty pitiful. I was like, man, these Pistons.
Yeah, that was the last game.
That was the last game you ever go to.
Man, Chris, you go through so many co-hosts. I gotta say.
I don't go. No, Mark is at work right now. We're recording this on Wednesday right now, so Mark is only available on Monday. So when we record, we usually do it on Mondays.
Yeah, but there used to be Chris and Chris. Then there was
no. Chris and Chris is a whole new show, a whole nother show.
Is that still even being done?
Yeah, we do it monthly.
Oh, that's what it is. It's changed.
We all have jobs, Basil.
You make it like I don't work either. I mean, currently not right now.
We're not at home all the time now, so we have to stick to a schedule.
Whatever happened to the little amigos?
Man, me and Bryce are on hold right now. Okay, we're on hold, but we're gonna be making some more episodes. We just need because we're both working now, so we don't have time to record as much as we used to.
All right, y'all. This has been real. I definitely appreciate it. I got to come back for another episode one day.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll talk about more about your urban planning experience and what.
Yeah, and just everything. This was a dope show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a one.
Also,
I'm playing.
I remember the developer Quinn Evans. That's what I was thinking of.
Okay, Quinn Evans. All right, there goes Jonathan, and that's been another edition of the Crisscross Corner. Please listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and now on the Anchor app, where you can donate $4.99 a month to help sustain future episodes. As you can tell today, we had technical difficulties. If you guys give us that $4.99, we can stop that technical difficulty with better Wi-Fi. All right, so please give at anchor.fm/crisscrosscorner/support. Thank you for your support. Stay safe, social distance, and be nice to each other.